Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing and discussing Star Wars Darth Bane Trilogy. This is a series of books made up of Path of Destruction, published in 2006, Rule of Two, published in 2007, and Dynasty of Evil, published in 2009, written by Drew Karpyshyn, published by Del Rey, and part of the old expanded universe which is now called Star Wars Legends since Disney bought it. Set roughly 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the story follows the character of Dessel, who lives under the thumb of his abusive father while working in a brutal labor job in the Cortosis mines, deep in the planet of Apatros, when one fateful day Dessel wins a sabacc game with a Republic naval officer. You see, Dessel has precognitive abilities, and this gives him an advantage in sabacc, when a fight breaks out between the two and Dessel kills the naval officer. Now, wanted by the Republic, he must escape Apatros, where he then enlists in the Sith army to evade the Republic. During the Battle of Phasera, Dessel mutinies against his commanding officer Ulabor to prevent his unit from going on a suicide mission. Dessel then takes command of the unit and they are victorious over the Republic forces. However, Dessel is arrested for his insubordination and taken before the Sith Lord Kopez. Instead of being executed, the Sith Lord senses the Force potential in Dessel. He is then enrolled in the Sith Academy on Korriban, where he will learn the true power of the dark side, becoming Darth Bane, one of the most feared Sith Lords in galactic history, and the Sith will never be the same. So this is a series of books that I actually took my time to read through these ones. To be honest, they were good, solid Star Wars books, but they weren't real page turners, so I kind of took my time with them. Path of Destruction I actually read quite some years ago now. I read it before The Force Awakens came out. And then a couple years after, I picked up Rule of Two, read that one, and then finally finished the last book, Dynasty of Evil, over the summer. Now, to be honest, that's kind of not really the best way to read them, because by the time you get to the third book, it's been so long since you read the first book, your memory is a little bit foggy. And so characters show up from the first book that you can't remember who they were and all that kind of stuff. So I would read them closer together, at least minimum a year apart. But overall, pretty good, solid Star Wars story. Now, this trilogy deals with the whole life of Darth Bane. So it encapsulates his whole life, how he first gets started, he comes up in the mines, how he gets off of that planet, how he gets involved with the Sith, how he turns to the dark side, and then how he becomes disillusioned with the Sith, how he takes his first apprentice and creates the Rule of Two, and then all up until the end of his life. So, very solid Star Wars story, and if you're interested in the history of the Sith and how the whole Rule of Two got started, I'm pretty sure a lot of people probably wondered that when Episode 1 came out and Yoda gave that explanation at the end. There's only ever two of them, no more, no less. And then we haven't seen them in 1,000 years. Well, why haven't we seen them in 1,000 years? Why are there only two of them? You read this trilogy, you find that out. So now I'm going to talk into a lot more details now. It's going to be a lot more spoilers in this next section, because I'm going to talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about it. So what I did like about the trilogy. So right away, Darth Bane is a very interesting character in this book. And he's a very different Sith Lord from any of the ones you've seen before in the movies and stuff. Because he's very different from Darth Vader. They kind of took some of the similar elements and kind of flipped them around. So in Episode 1, we see Anakin is a slave, and he does have a crappy job working with Watto, but his at-home life is very, very good. And he's a very good-hearted character. And, all that is seen when he first meets Qui-Gon Jinn. There's not really any way when you watch that first movie, how does this character turn to the dark side? And then that makes it even that much more tragic, because, his mother really loved him. He had his mother's love. He loved his mother. He had a very good at-home life. And then, what rough stuff he did have, he was taken out of that because he was taken with the Jedi at the age of 9. Now, Darth Bane, on the other hand, is very, very different. He did not have a very good at-home life. His father treated him very badly, physically abused him, mentally abused him. And on top of that, he had this very horrible job working in these mines, and he didn't get out of it when he was 9 years old. His whole life, right up until he's a grown man, he's stuck in this rut, in these mines, until that twist of fate with the Sabacc game, and he has to get off the planet. So very, very different. So it's very easy to see how he can go down to the path of the dark side, because right off the bat, he's already a very dark character, a very broken character, right at the start of the story. Another thing, it's very interesting to see how he operates as a Sith Lord. So you to compare him to other ones, like you have Darth Maul, who was like almost like a feral, almost ninja-like style of fighting and stuff, very acrobatic. And then you had Emperor Palpatine, who was like this frail, evil, conniving old wizard. And then you had like Darth Vader, who's almost like this plotting Frankenstein-like monster with the cyborg implants and all that. Where Darth Bane in this book series, man, he is like a tank. He is like a brutal character. So he's like, the way he's described, he's like basically built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's bald, and he's almost like more like a WWE wrestler that gets hold of a lightsaber. He just like smashes through his opponents, hacks through them, and uses the Force to kill them in really brutal ways. He is a tank. So very different character than, say, Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, even Darth Maul. So they did a good job of making him very different in the way he fights and his style and all that. He's very much like a brute force in this story. So I thought that was interesting. And another thing that is interesting about this book is it really examines the relationship, how the relationship dynamic works between a Sith Lord and their apprentice. So it's not something we've seen a little bit of. We see a little bit of that in the movies, but it doesn't really get examined in the same way, say, the relationship between a Jedi Knight and his Padawan does. Because we see that play out with Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we know how that works. We see that a lot in the movies. But you don't really see how that would play out on a day-to-day basis with the Sith. But in these books, you get to see that. And it's very different where the Jedi Knights, they have a mutual respect for each other, and, they care about each other. And, the relationship might even be like two brothers, or even like a father and son relationship, or mother-daughter relationship, or you kind of get my point. Where the Sith, it's not like that at all. There is no bond of love there. They don't care about each other. It's there out of convenience. They're using each other. Bane is using his apprentice, Darth Zana, because he needs someone to take on the mantle of the Sith when he can no longer do it, and he needs to find the most powerful apprentice possible. So if he comes across another apprentice more powerful than the one he has, and they kill her, he doesn't care. He only wants the most powerful one. She doesn't care about him. She's only using him because she wants to learn all the secrets that Darth Bane has, so she can get as much power as possible, and then eventually take him out and become the new Sith Lord. So it's a very different dynamic there. So I thought that was interesting. On top of that, the character of Darth Zana, his apprentice that he has throughout the trilogy, is an interesting Sith Lord, and they kind of made her a bit of a foil to Darth Bane, because where Darth Bane is this very physically imposing, brutal tank, how he goes about his business, Zana is small, she's female, and physically weaker than Bane, so the way she fights and the tricks she uses and everything, how she goes about her business in this trilogy is very different from Bane. It's a contrast to Bane, and it makes their final conflict, their final battle against each other very interesting, because they have very different fighting techniques, and they have to, she almost has to outsmart him. So it makes for a very interesting battle, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say, because they have very different opposing physical presences and fighting styles. And then in the third book, the character of the assassin, the Huntress, was a pretty interesting character too. Very mysterious, like a bounty hunter, assassin type character. They did a really good job of that one, or the writer did a good job with that character as well. Now, another thing that I really liked about this trilogy is, and this is one thing about Star Wars in general, is I've always found the Sith more interesting than the Jedi. So some of the things I like about Star Wars is I like the Sith. I find them more mysterious. They usually look cooler than the Jedi. Like Darth Maul looks really cool. Darth Vader looks really cool. The Emperor Palpatine looks cool. He's like this little evil, like this evil wizard or warlock. So I always found them more interesting, and they got more of a mysterious background than the Jedi, so you kind of makes you want to know more about them. And then also I always found like the idea of the bounty hunters and the criminal underworld and all that kind of stuff interesting. So usually when I go to pick up a Star Wars book or a comic or whatever, I'll usually gravitate to the expanded universe stories that deal with those kinds of things. Stories about the Sith and bounty hunters and the underworld and all that kind of stuff. Those are the stories I like. Now I do read other stories, obviously, but those are usually turn out to be some of my favorite ones, is the ones that deal with the more shady characters of the Star Wars universe. And now another thing that I liked about this series is it fixes some of the conflicts in lore between the old EU and the prequels. So what I mean by that is it answers two questions. So before episode 1 came out, we just had whatever the expanded universe was, all the books and comics and stuff. And then we had the original trilogy. And the only Darth that was running around was Darth Vader. That was the only one that had the title of Darth. And no one thought it was a title. It was just his name. You didn't know there was any significance to it. You just thought that was his name, Darth, that's it. There was no hint that the Emperor was called Darth Sidious, nothing like that. And then when you read the expanded universe, all the Sith Lords, none of them have the title of Darth. Like you have this Dark Lord of the Sith, Exar Kun and stuff like that, but he's not Darth Kun or Darth Exar. You know what I mean? There is no other Darths. And on top of that, there's nothing to really suggest in the original series that there can only be 2 of them. I mean, they don't really... I never really questioned why there wasn't more than 2 of them, but it was never really pointed out that there could only be 2 of them. It could only be one, like the Master and the Apprentice. That wasn't something that wasn't established until the prequels came out. So then you read the expanded universe books, and you have like armies of Sith guys. You have more than one. You have a Sith Master who's got more than one apprentice and all that kind of thing. And you have big armies of Sith Lords attacking the Jedi and stuff like that. And then the prequels come out, and then you see they introduce Darth Maul, Darth Sidious. So then that changes things. That was like a retcon that was done. I don't know if that was always I don't think that was always George Lucas's intention with the original series. I think that was a retcon that came in with the prequels, that now Darth isn't just Darth Vader's name, it's now a title. So now that creates like a conflict with the old lore. There being only allowed to be 2 of them and this title of Darth, because none of them go by Darth, and there's way more than 2 of them. So this series kind of patches that conflict between the 2 lores and fixes that and explains it away. So in this series, when in the first book you have all these Sith Lords, but none of them are going by the title of Darth. And it's revealed that, well, Darth was an old title that the Sith used to use like a really long time ago, but then it was abandoned. And this is one of the things that kind of pushes Bane to realize that the Sith Order, or convinces him, I guess, that the Sith Order really isn't working out. It's very watered down. There's so many of them, and some of them are more powerful than the others, but then you have these weaker ones, and you have these weaker ones, they can gang up on the more powerful one, take him out, and then they can take control, but now you've diluted the power base because none of them were as strong as the one that they took out. So the first thing he does is he brings back the title of Darth. So he goes around as Lord Bane, but then he brings back Darth and he says, no, I'm not Lord Bane. He says, I'm going to be Darth Bane, Dark Lord of the Sith. So he brings back the title in the first book. And then it explains why there's only ever 2. Because Darth Bane reorganizes the Sith and realizes that, well, it's too watered down. They're always fighting amongst each other. There's always civil war. They're always losing to the Jedi. If there was only 2 of them, you could keep it secret and you could grow your power base, and then only the absolutely most powerful Sith Lord would be around, because whoever wipes out all these other Sith, that's going to be the most powerful guy. Then the next Sith in line, whoever they are, if they can take this guy out, then they're going to even be that much more powerful. And then the next person that has to take them out, they're going to be even that much more powerful. So it's a way to keep the Sith really powerful, whichever one, and not dilute the power across like a bunch of them. So all that gets explained and patched up in this trilogy. So that's one thing I really liked about it. And then another thing I liked about this series of books is that it brings back some familiar settings from some past EU stories that I read in the past. So I read a mini-series, Star Wars Dark Lord, or it was Jedi Tales. That's what it was called. It was Jedi Tales: Dark Lords of the Sith, and it was a 6-part miniseries that Dark Horse put out in the mid '90s. And I remember the artwork was fantastic, and the covers were painted. It was a really good miniseries. I really loved it. And in that series, one of the planets that was heavily featured was the planet of Onderon, and it had a moon called Daxon. And on that moon, it had the tomb of Dark Lord called Freeden Nad. And so in this story, that's in the second book, that comes up again. Onderon comes up again, and you have the moon of Freeden, the Daxon moon, and on it, Freeden Nad's tomb. And Darth Bane goes there to get more secrets to become more powerful. And he does become more powerful, but it comes at a really heavy price. So I like that. It makes the world seem like interconnected and really large, and that's what I liked about it. And then another thing that I liked about this series was we really got to see the Force used in a very brutal way, and you almost get a glimpse of what an R-rated Star Wars movie could be like. Because in the movies, like Darth Vader, when he kills his guys, he just Force chokes them and they die. Or, they get taken out with a lightsaber, and a lightsaber is like a bloodless weapon because it cauterizes the wound where it's so hot. But in this story, you have Darth Bane. He kills one of the Sith Lords, not by Force choking him, but by lifting him up in the air with the Force and then crushing his chest with the Force. And so it's described, the guy's chest gets crushed and all this blood erupts out of his mouth. So it's actually a fairly gory scene. Another Sith guy's on the ground. He's almost half dead. So Bane finishes him off by smashing his head in with his heel of his boot. So like Bane is just a really brutal character and uses the Sith and uses the Force in a really brutal way. So I like that. That was cool. And on top of that, and this goes for most of the Star Wars books, they're usually light reads. You can read them pretty fast. They're usually between 300 and 400 pages, usually not much longer than that. And I like reading them because they're just pure escapism, and they're usually pretty fun to read. Now, they are hit and miss, but for the most part, they are pretty fun. Now I'll get into some of the things that I didn't like about this trilogy. So one of the things I didn't like is there are no memorable Jedi characters in this trilogy of books. Now, I know the series focuses more on the Sith, but the Jedi are written in a way they're so bland and forgettable that I can't remember any of them except for one, General Hoth, because of his name. He was named after Hoth from the original trilogy. That's the only character I could remember. But they're also kind of written in a bland way that when they finally get, and a lot of them get killed in this trilogy of books, that when they do get killed, you don't care about them at all. There's no connection there to those characters at all. The only exception is in the last book, they have a character called Set Hearth, and who's a dark Jedi. So he's a Jedi that broke away from the Jedi Order to go do his own thing, and he runs like his own businesses, and he's like a playboy, and he's kind of like the swashbuckling, almost like a Han Solo type character. Pretty interesting character. And then lastly, one of the ideas I thought was pretty lame from the first book is the whole idea of the thought bomb. So when the book starts out, you have all these Sith running around. Of course, you got to get to the point where there's only 2 of them. So you have to get rid of them all somehow. So the way the writer gets rid of them in this, the idea they come up with is the Sith figure out, or Darth Bane figures it out, this ritual, this old ancient Sith ritual where you can create like a thought bomb, but you have to have a bunch of Sith in on it to do it. So they all go in this cavern on this planet where they're having their final battle with the Jedi and the Republic. So they start to do the ceremony, and it takes all the Sith to do it. And then the Jedi show up there and kind of foil their plan up, and it creates almost like some kind of a weird Force implosion or explosion where it wipes out destroys all the souls of the Sith that were there and the Jedi that were there in the vicinity of this thing. And so then there's only like a few of them left, and Bane kills them off. So that's how they get rid of the Sith. And I thought it was really lame. I don't know. I thought it was kind of a stupid idea myself. But that's how they did it in the book. So those were some of the things I didn't like. But overall, pretty solid trilogy. And if you're a Star Wars fan and you find the Sith interesting and the history of the Sith interesting, definitely give this one a read. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.